did during the COVID year of 2020 and now, and then where we're going. So we got a lot of projects going on right now in the community. But before we get into the presentation, I do want to introduce the council members that are on the call. First up is Councilwoman Keppel.
Thanks, Mayor. Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. I think you're going to find a lot of really helpful information. These have been jam-packed with useful info. Just quickly, I want to mention this Saturday, there's a lot going on in Ward 4. So 10 o'clock, I'll be joining the mayor and Councilman O'Malley at the Cove Church Gold Coast meeting. That'll be outside on the lawn of the Cove Church property where we're building the intergenerational center. And then at 4 o'clock at Madison Park is the Madison Park block party that some community members have been organizing. I'll be up there if you want to come chat with me and hang out with folks. And there's usually some free food and families hanging out. So hope to see you at one of those events, and thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks, Councilwoman. And Council at Large, Tom Bullock.
Hi, everyone. It's been my pleasure to join Mayor George for these series of State of the City speeches. There's a lot that happens in our city, even without COVID and special initiatives. So it's good to and helpful to get information and briefings, development, management initiatives, and all the rest. I will be out of town this weekend, so I won't be able to join Councilwoman Keppel and the mayor at those community events. But one watchword I think is that when we all engage together, we do a better job. Our city and community gets better. So please keep in touch and keep coming out and share your ideas. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman. And with that, let's get started with the presentation. Thank you for those that submitted questions ahead of time. We did incorporate as many as we could into the presentation, but very specific questions, my office or Director Leininger will respond to you individually. So next slide, please. There we go. So the agenda, this should take about an hour or so. Switch things up a little bit to talk first about keeping Lakewood safe. Obviously, Lakewood safety is on the forefront of all of our minds. So I want to talk directly about some of the recent gun-related incidents in our community and what the city is doing to address those incidents. Then talk about COVID-19 response. You know, as I mentioned at the beginning, all of our lives have been impacted by COVID. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what we have done at the city to keep everybody safe and also deliver services throughout the course of the pandemic. And then we'll talk a little bit about water sewer infrastructure updates. Water sewer is very important. It's a long-standing tradition of every administration has dealt with, is making sure that we update and upgrade our water sewer infrastructure. So we'll provide that update. And then Director Leininger gets to talk a little bit about some of the fun stuff in terms of development within the community. So recent criminal activity, it's nearly every day that we're seeing gun-related violence across our region and also at the national level. These gun-related incidents have become far too common and have now come into our community. After a year-long pandemic that's resulted in the loss of income and livelihood paired with easy access to guns, I fear that we may see similar instances over the next 3 months. We must have an appropriate and effective response to these incidents, which I'll talk about that a little bit on the next slide. But before I get into those next steps that we're taking to ensure that we continue to be a safe community, I want to provide an update on some of the recent incidents. As you can see, in most cases, the suspects have been apprehended by the Lakewood Police Department. And I do want to thank the Lakewood Police Department for their hard work and careful investigations and steps to apprehend these criminals. I also want to take a minute to talk directly about the incident at Madison Park that occurred in mid-April. At 6:45 p.m. on Tuesday, April 13th, Lakewood Police Department were called to the park after a report of gunshots being fired. Police arrived at the scene and discovered an 18-year-old male with 2 apparent gunshot wounds. The victim was taken to Metro and is recovering. At this time, we have 2 people charged and in custody for the incident. During that investigation, information was uncovered and the police chief recommended a temporary closure to the courts. Temporarily closing the courts was in no way an easy decision. You know, as a former Lakewood High School athlete and later a Lakewood Recreation Youth Athletics supervisor, I understand the value of that outlet. But as mayor, I have to balance safety and security in Lakewood with the free and open enjoyment of our treasured parks. At the end of the day, I'll take the criticism over being overly cautious, but what I can't do is ignore what our police department was recommending based on their investigation. We are glad to see that the basketball hoops are back up, and I'm loving seeing the community really rally together and come together and having community events on Saturdays. That's what makes Lakewood so great, is when there are traumatic times, we come together as a community and work to better our community. But back to that incident, it certainly rattled all of our everybody in our community, and for good reason, because this incident happened at one of our local treasures, our parks, and we want everyone to feel safe to use our parks anytime, day or night. And I just wanted to let you all know, since the first incident, I've been working hand in hand with our police department, community partners, come up with solutions to keep our parks safer, which I will talk about more on the next slide. And I understand that sometimes maybe increased police presence doesn't make everyone feel safer. I, along with members of Lakewood City Council, sent communication to the Anti-Racism Task Force so that they can make recommendations for equity and inclusion so that everyone, again, feels safe in our parks, especially our BIPOC community. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I've included some short-term and long-term solutions about safety in our community. The short-term solutions are just that. You know, none of us want to live in an environment where we have an armed officer sitting at our parks to make us feel safe all the time. It's really going to take our entire community working together to keep us safe. And that's really what is happening at Lakewood, at Madison Park every Saturday and since the incident. What we've done is have increased patrols at the parks where Lakewood police officers, when they aren't on another call, they will be going to all of our parks. This is something I talked a lot about with Chief Kowchak before any incident at Lakewood Parks, is we want to get back to more community policing. And we were talking about amping up foot patrols already throughout our community when the weather broke. So that's something that's going to be maintained for the long term. We also have a specific officer assignment at Madison Park 7 days a week during high use times at the park. That will be ongoing indefinitely. Because of those 2 incidents, we want to make sure that there's that extra presence there. We've also added high-tech police cameras throughout the city. Lakewood has had cameras throughout the city since 2006 was when the first cameras were put up, happened to be at Madison Park. And each year, Lakewood has invested in our cameras and will continue to do so. We've added new higher tech cameras to our fleet, which will be very helpful in any sort of incident that happens in our community, and have been helpful as the police review these gun-related incidents that happened, and we're able to apprehend the suspects in those cases. We've added and we're making sure security guards are at our parks. Again, meeting regularly with the police department, and we developed a trauma response. You know, all of us have been impacted by the trauma of COVID, but many were impacted by the incident that happened at Madison Park. Kids were playing soccer, The softball field was being used. So we want to make sure that those that were impacted by that traumatic event have resources. So the Lakewood City Schools have provided parents information for resources to help students and parents deal with that trauma. We here at City Hall have worked with frontline services to provide additional support to our community members. So if you or someone you know is dealing with the trauma of that incident or COVID, please contact our Human Services Department and we can work with you and get you in touch with frontline services. Now, the long term, reducing access to guns is certainly a nationwide issue that Lakewood cannot solve alone. We could put every safety measure we can think of in place and cannot guarantee another incident will not happen. That's why we need to be talking about long-term solutions to keep our community engaged on this matter and also safe. We are in early discussions with Metro Health to begin a community stewardship program. This training program will bring together leaders in public service and community members so we can begin to understand and better respond to trauma. So that is something that's in the works. It's still in the early phases, but we're looking forward to rolling that out when the time is right. We're also working with Lakewood Outdoor Basketball Committee on mentorship programs. For a number of years, the city has partnered with LOBC to have a mentor floating between the basketball courts here in Lakewood. We've worked with LOBC. We're enhancing that membership program and working on getting more mentors up at the basketball courts, which will be a great thing for our community. And also, again, working with the Anti-Racism Task Force. We need to make sure that we create a better place for all of our residents. So I'm looking forward to getting feedback from the Anti-Racism Task Force so that everybody feels safe in Lakewood and welcome at all times. Next slide, please. Switching gears a bit here, but I wanted to point out and remind everyone about Lakewood Police Department's award-winning crisis intervention team. This is a program that I'm very proud of and we're working to enhance throughout our department. These specialized officers are able to tap into specialized training in crisis situations and de-escalate those scenarios. The officers pictured in this photo received the Medal of Honor for their work in de-escalating a situation that saved the life of a man who was unfortunately threatening to leap from a building, and they saved this man's life. So again, wanted to point out that we do have this specialized award-winning training, and also point out that our former police chief who retired last year was recognized as CIT Officer of the Year in 2018. So this is a very important program for the city of Lakewood. We've been on the forefront of this, really a leader in crisis intervention, and we'll continue to focus on that program. So moving into the rest of the presentation, 2020, where we've been, as I mentioned, all of our lives have been impacted by COVID-19, both personally and professionally. I want to talk a little bit on the next couple slides of what we did here at the city to keep people safe and, again, ensure that our services were delivered throughout the community during really an unprecedented once-in-a-century pandemic. So early on, I created an internal COVID-19 task force that began meeting in March of 2020 to address employee and citywide needs. As a new mayor, I look back and I credit this task force with a lot of the good work we were able to do over the last 15 months. And this task force was made up of a member of every department, and we would meet every day to discuss the governor's orders that were coming down or the new information that was coming from the pandemic, and how are we going to ensure that employees were safe when they came to work, but also how do we deliver our services? We at the city did not have the opportunity to say, your refuse isn't going to be picked up. The police officers are not going to respond to a call. EMS is not going to respond. So how do we keep them safe, keep our employees safe, but also deliver these services? And that task force was very beneficial because we would spend time talking and putting in procedures to keep everybody safe. We also wanted to limit exposure to our residents, but also provide updates. Now I want you to think back, remember March of 2020, April of 2020, there was so much unknown about COVID. Remember, we didn't even know how it was spread. And at the time, everybody was looking for different ways to get accurate information about COVID. So early on, we created 2 web pages devoted to providing up-to-date information to our residents. We took information from federal, state, regional sites, as well as Lakewood specific information, put that on our coronavirus page of our website so that residents could come to one place and find updated information. We also created a phone line for residents to hear recorded messages with COVID-19 updates. You know, my thought was early on that a lot of our seniors who were being disproportionately impacted by COVID, they did not follow us on social media. They did not, you know, they may not have internet. So we wanted to provide a phone line so that they can get updated information, so that they could have that information in their hands to make good decisions about COVID. We created several videos and share those on our website. We did mail correspondence, some citywide mail correspondence with information related to COVID. I remember one weekend, me and the fire chief drove around and dropped off packets of information to all of our senior centers to let them know that, hey, the city is on top of this and we're going to make sure that we keep Lakewood residents safe. We also developed an internal COVID-19 playbook that documented our policies and procedures for dealing with COVID. This was a document that is updated regularly so that employees, if they have a question of how something is handled related to COVID, they can go back and look at that playbook. Also, I want to point out that no full-time workers were laid off during COVID-19. And I'm very proud of that. And I don't think a lot of municipalities can say the same thing. The next slide is going to talk a little bit about the fiscal austerity measures that we put in place, but we worked hard to make sure that our employees were not being laid off. That means they're able to come into work, do their job, go home, feed their families, pay their mortgages. And so I think that's a really great thing. And one more. There we go. So this slide is the fiscal austerity measures, again, that we took to make sure that we could continue to deliver those services to our community. You know, for instance, a lot of communities, they pause their refuse department's bulk pickup or move that to 1 day a week. We did not do that here in Lakewood. We continued to maintain the highest level of services possible during the pandemic. And part of that is due to some of these austerity measures that we put in place, which was early on, we had a freeze in hiring, travel, training, new contract services, and overtime. We limited discretionary spending. We curbed capital spending. Some major projects were put on hold. When we were looking at numbers back in March, we were facing projected revenue losses of potentially $5 million. So we needed to put measures in place early so that we could come out of this pandemic financially stable. So for instance, the very important Cove Church project that is happening in Ward 4. We had not started construction on that yet, so we had to pause. I made the very difficult decision. We have to pause this project for right now until we get our hands around what's going to happen to us financially. Glad to say it was only a couple months pause. We're able to start that project up again in the early fall. And we will luckily have the new Cove Church, the new home of human services in Lakewood, hopefully functional and open to the public in January of 2022. We also put in a tracking system for all of our departments to track COVID-19 related expenses. And that was very helpful for when we did get the CARES Act funding. We were able to put those dollars towards the CARES Act and not hit our general fund. The two major cost saving programs that we put in place was an overtime reduction and a voluntary furlough savings. Through an aggressive reduction in overtime, we saved over $500,000 compared to the prior year. And through a voluntary shared work program, we saved another $500,000 to that furlough program. So to combine over $1 million in those two programs so that we could be financially stable at the end of the year. I also want to point out, and Director Leininger will talk a little bit more about this, but I just wanted to touch base that we are one of the very first communities in the state to establish a rental relief program for our small businesses. This program was released to the public in March of 2020. And essentially, it provided rent relief for small businesses that were not able to pay their rent because we were in the middle of shutdown. And we were later able to tap into some funds for a residential rent relief program. To date, through those programs, we've helped 207 Lakewood small businesses pay their rent and provided $775,000 in assistance. We've helped 660 households pay their rents with $1.2 million in assistance. And I really credit those two programs and the hard work also of our planning department to get those up and running and to help us weather the storm and get through this pandemic. So next slide. So 2021, where we're going. Obviously, COVID-19 has still been a major focus of this year, but it looks like we're finally beginning to come out of it. But we're still focusing on COVID-19. But we're still able to focus on COVID-19 and still keep moving and progressing the city forward. One of my initiatives was enhanced communication for our residents from City Hall. So we've continued to boost up our social media and our website presence. I'm also really proud. Recently, we released an e-newsletter where once a month, we will provide a newsletter directly to your email box where you can hear updates of what's going on at the city. So there's the link to sign up for the newsletter. I encourage you to do so. A lot of good information comes in that newsletter. Also, we are going to have a new website by the end of the month here. It'll be lakewoodoh.gov. Earlier this month, the Federal Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency officially took over the registration system and processing for obtaining a .gov top level domain, and having all US government websites at the federal, state, and local level on a .gov platform is a top national security issue for the Biden administration. It lets people know that the website that people are using is official. So we've moved in that direction and we'll be changing the website. So if you have the One Lakewood website in your saved, be sure to save the new website, and there'll be a transition period as well. But looking forward to have that update. And then the next couple slides are going to talk about water sewer infrastructure updates. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, water sewer is so important to our community, and it's a very costly update. So I wanted to inform our community where we're at with water sewer infrastructure updates. And then finally, Director Leininger is going to talk a bit about development projects in our parks and everywhere else throughout the community. So water sewer, I want to provide you all an update on the implementation of our integrated wet weather improvement plan, or IWIP for short. This is a very large, very complex plan that's been in the works for years. And the IWIP itself was approved by City Council back in 2018, back when I was on City Council. Our next step in the IWIP plan is to look at equitable ways to pay for required water and sewer updates. And this includes a review of our current water and sewer rate structure. Lakewood's water sewer system is very unique, and that is actually a benefit to Lakewood. That means that both the US and Ohio regulators understand that Lakewood is a unique system. Our sewers were largely built at the turn of the last century as independent projects to simply move household sewage away from homes as quickly as possible. And at that time, it would discharge directly into the lake or river. Our system itself was connected decades later. Some of our sewers were built with a single pipe combined sewer, but most of Lakewood was built with two pipes, a storm and a sanitary sewer, kind of like the picture above. Regulators have recognized our uniqueness, and that's important because when we work with them, they're working with us to find the best projects to address this system. Next slide, please. So like I've mentioned, we've continued for years to invest in our water sewer system. And this is really important when we have those meetings with our regulators. We've raised our ability to capture and treat from 79 to 85%. That's a really important number. There's many communities that spend millions to get there, but Lakewood, we're there. But since we're on the Lake Erie and Rocky River watersheds, we have higher levels of control that must be met. The high rate treatment project down by the plant will raise our percentage of capture to 88%. And our 5-year IWIP block plan plans to invest $50 million on our next 2 5-year cycles. At that point, we'll be able to remove 95% of the pollutants that come from our system, captured and treated. It's a huge investment, but this has to be done to increase our capture and treat rates, which is required by our regulators. Additionally, we keep up with regular, if you will, water and sewer improvements through the IWIP. Lauderdale, Elber, and Leedale are slated for water main replacements this year. And then both Andrews and Gladys are slated to have water main replacements in 2022. So we continue to speak regularly with the US and the Ohio EPA regulators. In fact, we had an hours-long technical meeting with them last week, and they continue to agree that our IWIP is the correct path forward. Now, we had hoped to hear last year on whether or not we would have a consent decree, but COVID has delayed that response. We should hear something by the end of by the end of the year on whether or not we will receive a consent decree from the regulators. City Council has approved the IWIP, as I've mentioned, and approved rate increases through 2023. When we work with the regulators, they see this as a very strong sign of Lakewood's commitment to the implementation of the IWIP. The question now is for 2023 and beyond, how do we forward these required capital sewer projects? And we need to determine equitable ways and how we meet those needs. Now, our current rate structure is based on water usage. Increases thus far fund the high rate treatment plant and improvements to date, but we need to find additional increases to fund the next phase of the IWIP. And we need to structure those increases is going to be very important. We have a very old system and a plan that needs continuous improvement as well, which is going to require more funding in the years ahead. But we try to use the benefit of time to get things started now so that predictable and small rate increases become equitable. So in partnership with our consultant team, we've reviewed our ability to pay for the $274 million infrastructure program over many years. Right now, all water and sewer projects are being paid for from the water and sewer customers pay on your water bills, which is based entirely on the volume of potable water used. With advanced technology and more efficient appliances, the volume of water used by our customers has reduced by approximately 20% over the past 10 years, which directly reduces our revenue. No fees are based on the relative wet weather impacts to the system, which is really what drives the improvement costs. Many communities in our region use a fixed charge or impervious area charges, including Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, Columbus, Elyria. These impervious area charges are very commonplace in many districts. So discussions with the public are ongoing. In 2019, there was public meetings, and the administration asked for public input. And the impervious charge was what the majority of the public agreed was most equitable. So in the coming months, I'll be requesting City Council to allocate $25 million of the American Rescue Plan Act funds towards our significant water and sewer infrastructure needs. The ARPA funds will provide significant assistance in the near term by allowing us to reduce our planned rate increases back to simple inflationary levels. And that will help our water customers recovering from the pandemic's financial impacts. So again, that $25 million, as I had mentioned before, rate increases were approved through 2023. That $25 million will reduce what those rate increases were previously approved. However, these one-time ARPA funds are not going to cover all the needs that we have in the decades ahead. We have to use this moment to move to more equitable way to sustain our progress on water and sewer. So a dedicated impervious surface fee is the best approach to equitably recover the costs of wet weather management, because they reflect each property's demand on our city's wet weather infrastructure. These fees are an essential component of the proper sustainability of modern utilities. And as I mentioned, are common among most of our neighboring communities. So introducing this fee at a modest level allows all property owners to understand the new billing structure without undue financial pressure. So starting the fee in January 1st, 2022 allows the new structure to be up and running while we have the ARPA funds to support the sewer system. We will be bringing this utility fee structure reform package to council in June after a meeting with an advisory task force and holding a community conversation on June 16th. This impervious service fee is a start to a more modernized and sustainable billing system. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Leininger, who gets to share probably some more of the fun things that are going on within our community. A lot of development going on. Some things slowed down a bit because of COVID, and that was just nationally we saw some slowdowns, but a lot of projects are moving forward, and that's exciting for our community. So a little bit about Director Leininger. He joined the city in July of 2020. He has over 20 years of municipal planning, zoning, community, and economic development experience. His previous experience includes assistant town manager in Bluffton, South Carolina. He was director of public service and development for our neighbor in Fairview Park. And we were recently able to acquire him from his position as executive director of the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission. Sean is currently the vice chairman of the Northeast Ohio First Suburbs Development Council. He has a master's in city and regional planning from Ohio State University. And with that, Director Leininger.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the introduction and the kind words. And for one last time, thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to be part of the State of the City address. It is very much appreciated. So with that, I am going to follow the same general theme that the mayor had presented. We're going to talk about where we've been over the past year and then focus a little bit more on where we're going. Along the way, as the mayor mentioned, we're going to talk about some development projects that are in the works. as well as then focus on some city projects, and then also dive in and focus on a few that are specific to Ward 4 here this evening. So to begin, and really more so, this is a good starting point because the mayor, of course, spent a lot of time talking about this, but this is where, as a planning staff, as well as the rest of the city staff, we spent a lot of our effort over the last year. I want to spend some time and touch upon the various support programs that the city established in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So shortly after the issuance of the stay-at-home order that would ultimately shut us down in the rest of the state for nearly 2 months, the city launched several programs, including a small business assistance program, and soon after that, a residential rent assistance program. The small business program provides up to $7,000 in rent or job retention assistance to qualifying businesses that have up to 50 employees. Now, in the city of Lakewood, we're proud that we're small business driven, and so most businesses in the city are eligible for this program. Alternatively, the residential rent assistance program provides rent assistance to income qualified residents that have or are being financially impacted by the pandemic. We've also set up several other non-financial assistance programs to help support businesses as well as customers, including we've created an express parking program that maintains 15-minute high turnover spaces 24/7, really with the goal of supporting socially distanced drop-off, pickup, shopping, and dining. And actually the image on your screen is an image of one of those parking spaces that you'll see. There's about 2 dozen of them around town. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to utilize one of these and take advantage of the great businesses that we have here in the community while still being socially distant. The other item that we've done is we've created more opportunities for outdoor dining. So what we did is we flexed our dimensional and locational standards, as well as limited the time of year restrictions on when outdoor dining can occur. And so by doing that, we created just over 2 dozen new outdoor dining venues in the community, again, with the whole idea of promoting socially distanced opportunities to go sit outside and enjoy some of the great food and beverage that's available here in the city of Lakewood. So before I move on from this topic, I want to share some of the results from the city's efforts in providing this COVID-19 assistance over this past year. So as Mayor George mentioned, we've approved over 660 residential rent assistance applications. But one thing that's not noted on this slide is we've helped actually over 1,200 residents in doing that. We've also approved 207 applications that have assisted Lakewood businesses. And to date, we've awarded over $1.2 million in residential assistance and then another $775,000 in small business assistance. In total, between those two programs, we have about $1.3 million available for residential and over $900,000 for small business. And so what that ultimately means, though, is that there's money still available. So if you have a business or you're a renter in the city that qualifies, or perhaps you know someone that does, please reach out to our partners at Lakewood Alive for business assistance or the Lakewood Community Services Center for residential rent assistance, and take advantage of these programs while the resource is available. This is a finite program. Once the money is gone, the program will be gone. So please take advantage of it. So we're going to shift gears a couple of times through the presentation today. This will be the first shift. So let's move on now from COVID-19 to talk about some of the development activity that's happening in Lakewood. So one great indicator of the strength of investment that's happening in our community is building permit activity. So in 2020, both permit activity and construction valuation remained strong. In fact, we had the 4th highest permit volume year and the 5th highest construction value year out of the last 10 years. Now, keep in mind, that's with a 2-month shutdown of our economy. Moving forward, though, you've heard about this on the national news. You probably heard it on the local news, but COVID-19 is absolutely impacting labor supply. It's impacting material availability, and it is absolutely impacting material prices. This is resulting in delays in projects. It has not resulted in the stoppage or withdrawal of projects, but it is resulting in delays. And so it's important to note as you leave here that those small scale projects, even the large scale projects that you're aware of, the downtown site, the Solal projects, the Studio West, and I'll talk about those in a couple of slides. Those projects are still advancing. They're taking a little bit more time now, given some of those conditions I had mentioned. And we'll start to see those really starts to take place over the next year to 3 years out. And really what they're going to do is they're still going to bring nearly $150 million in new permit activity to the city. So please know that those projects are still happening, just at a slower pace. Another indicator of our economy, especially in a bedroom community like Lakewood, is home sales. So this slide really starts to show what's been happening in the single family market over the last 5 years. Median sales price has increased 56% from $154,000 in 2016 to $240,000 in 2020. If we look a little bit farther to 2011, I know it's not on the slide, but if we look back to 2011, when the median price was just over $112,000, we've seen an increase of 114% to 2020. Not only are homes selling for more of them are selling, and they are not staying on the market long. So 586 single family homes sold in 2020, which was a 10-year high. And the median days of that those homes were on the market was 30 days, which was a 10-year low. And of all 586 single family home closings, what's important to note is 55% of those were at or above the list price, which is tremendous and really shows the strength of our local housing economy, especially in light of some of the national news that we hear about housing around the country. And ultimately, while that's all great news, especially for a homeowner that's looking to sell their home, it does really put a tremendous amount of pressure on affordability in the city of Lakewood. We are fortunate that we do have an award-winning affordable housing strategy that helps guide our investment into affordable housing initiatives throughout the community. Primarily what we do is we invest federal CDBG or community development block grant and home funds into the construction and rehab of owner-occupied and rental housing that ultimately supports income qualified households. So last year in 2020, we actually provided over $554,000 to support 44 properties, including the rehab and sale of a home on Orchard Grove. So in addition to those rehab, repair, accessibility, and maintenance programs that we manage, this year we're also building 2 new single family homes that will be sold to income qualified households. And so the image that's on your screen right now actually shows some really concepts of what those homes look like. One's on Shaw, the other's on Plover. If you drive by those sites today, you'll see them up. Plover's a little bit farther along than Shaw, but really excited to see these homes come to life in our community. And so in addition to those efforts, we also, in addition to those efforts of investing federal funds, we do also make available a property tax abatement incentive to developers that provide affordable housing. And I'll talk briefly about that when we talk about the solar projects in a couple slides from now. So we're going to shift gears here again. Now let's talk about a few of the major development projects that are taking place in the city. And let's start with the downtown redevelopment site. So obviously a lot has changed in the past year or two. On your screen is an aerial image of a drone image of the property from a few months back. If we had one side by side from 2017, 2018, obviously the hospital will still be there, and a lot has changed just with the physical condition of the site. Also, as you're likely aware, last year the city separated from the previous developer, and at that time we were planning to pivot towards Casto and North Point Realty. If you recall, was the other developer that was selected through that 2017 RFP process that the city conducted to find a developer for the property. This past December, City Council approved the pivot to Casto and North Point. And so over the last 5 or so months, what we've been really focused in on is in recognizing there's been a lot of changes to the site, significant changes to the site with respect, or since 2017, we've been working with Casto and North Point to update them on those current site conditions. And in turn, they're taking their proposal, which you see some renderings from the original proposal in 2017, and they're starting to modify their plans to align it with the current conditions of the site and the current market conditions that we're seeing today. At the same time, we're also negotiating a term sheet with them. That term sheet's going to provide the basis for a much more detailed development agreement that will come to life and be finalized as we get deeper into the design and the approval process. We've also re-engaged with the advisory panel that was originally created to help evaluate the RFP submittals that were submitted in 2017. So this time around, they're helping advise us on this updated proposal that Casto is putting together. And it's really as this updated proposal starts to take shape, that's when we'll be advancing into the public review and zoning process in the coming months, so that we can get the input from the public, from the neighborhood, from city council, from our boards and commissions that are going to be reviewing these applications. And so with everything's kind of building behind the scenes into this updated proposal, and you'll start to see that here very soon as that proposal starts to take shape yet later this month, and particularly into June. So moving on to some additional major developments that are happening in the city. Solov Development has 2 projects that sit really almost equidistant from the downtown redevelopment site. The first that's shown here is the former Barry Buick properties that are located on Detroit between Cranford and Rosewood. This project's known as the View West. It is a mixed-use project that has 160 units spread across 4 stories and also has a first floor commercial space. So as I shared previously, the city has recently made available a tax incentive to provide affordable housing. So it's this project along with the View East that I'll talk about in the next couple slides. These will be the first projects that are really utilizing this incentive. And what that means, in particular to this case, is that 20% of the building is required. So in this case, there's 160 units, so 32 units have to be made affordable for a period of 15 years. In exchange for doing that, the developer receives a 15-year tax abatement on the improved value. So there's currently buildings on the site, there's currently value on the site. Solov will continue to pay the existing taxes that are there. They will receive an abatement for 15 years while the affordable housing is provided on that improved construction value that results as a result of the development. So right now, as it relates to this project, Solov is currently working to complete their property acquisitions and their construction drawings. We continue to stay in regular contact with them, and we really do expect this project to be under construction hopefully this fall, but if not by the end of the year. And so this is a rendering of this project looking east and south down Detroit and a little bit south across the south side of the street, looking at 2 buildings that'll flank Detroit. And so then the second of the Solov development projects is the former Spitzer Chrysler site, which is on the other side of downtown near Detroit and Bunce. So the View East is what this project is called. It's a smaller sibling to the View West. It's also a mixed use project, but instead of 160 units, has 120 units, also spread across 4 stories and 2 buildings, and will also have a first floor commercial space. The project will include affordable housing units similar to the View West. So same math, same process and logic applies that I just explained on the previous project. So again, 20% of the building, in this case, there's 120 units. So 24 units will be made affordable for 15 years in exchange for a 15-year tax abatement. And so Solov actually just received approval on this project last week from the Architectural Board of Review. So, and because of that, the View East is about 6 months behind the West project. So we're really looking for this project to start to come to shape really in early 2022. So this is a rendering of the project as it was just reviewed by ABR. Actually, this was what was approved. This is looking at one of the buildings, but really just gives you a good sense of what both buildings are going to look like. This is actually the larger of the 2 buildings, both 4 stories, but this has the commercial component, whereas the other one is strictly residential. Very similar architecture between the 2 buildings. And again, just a little bit farther behind them, but ultimately looking forward to both of these projects to get moving here in the coming months. So, and finally, for the major development updates, Daniel Budish and Betsy Figge are leading the development team that will convert the former Mac Products manufacturing space that's located on Hurd Avenue, right behind the former Fantasy nightclub. They're going to convert this into an LGBTQ entertainment and restaurant venue. So this is a 20,000 square foot adaptive reuse project that's going to be occupied with Latinx restaurant and pizza kitchen. And really the signature piece of this is a new rec facility that'll have a mezzanine track. It's going to ultimately support fitness, volleyball, dodgeball, and then ultimately the Stonewall sports community. So the field house is going to be the first phase of a multi-phase project that's also going to include the historic rehabilitation of the former Fantasy nightclub, which is also going to provide a range of opportunities that support the LGBTQ community. So when complete, Studio West, as these buildings, as well as some other projects that are in around the vicinity, are called Studio West Complex. It's not only going to serve as an anchor for the gay community, but it's also going to serve as an anchor for the Eastern Detroit Avenue Gateway into Lakewood. Building permit drawings have been submitted, so look for this project hopefully later this year, potentially late summer, perhaps early fall, as we work through some final details. The fantasy rehab is a little bit farther out. They're continuing to work through the planning and design process this year. Really looking for construction on that building to take place in 2022. So as we look a little bit deeper into the year and look across other projects around the city at some of those smaller scale projects, there's a number of them that we're really excited about and looking forward to. Marlowe Avenue, or the Marlowe townhomes, are already under construction. The Lake Avenue homes that are sitting just on the edge of Ward 4, the utilities are in, and we're looking forward to WXZ getting construction going on foundations, hopefully later this month. The Beck Center has some green space improvements they're going to do in front of their space. But one of the things that we're all really excited to hear about at City Hall are the historic preservation and adaptive reuse projects that are spread throughout the city, a couple of which are notable and within Ward 4. So St. James School and Rectory has been acquired by Oster Services and partnered with Liberty Development to convert that into an office use. Trinity Lutheran Church, of course, the city purchased that a couple of years ago and is working with Scalish Construction to convert that into office use. By-Right Building in Ward 4, Jim Makito and his team have recently acquired that, received some historic preservation tax credits from the state of Ohio. St. Cyril and Methodius, just around the corner from the By-Right, was purchased by Canez Development. They're looking to convert that into their own office use, but then also provide some additional office space for other businesses. And then also the former Board of Education offices that were acquired by Liberty Development on Warren Road, which currently has a historic preservation tax credit in front of the state of Ohio. We look forward to hopefully hearing news about that next month and the status of their application. So some really exciting things happening on the historic preservation and adaptive reuse front in the community. So we're going to change gears one last time as part of my presentation, and we're going to focus now on some city projects that are scheduled for this year. And we're going to start with Kaufman Park. And so improvements to Kaufman Park have been bid out. I think actually the bids are due yet this week or first of next, with work beginning later this summer. So this project is going to provide a major update to the park, including ADA accessibility improvements from the Detroit entrance. We're going to provide a circuit walking path around the park, picnic shelter. We're going to upgrade the play equipment. It's going to have a nature-based theme. And we're also going to integrate a new water play feature. Finally, we'll also have an opportunity to introduce some public art into the park, really by repurposing the blades of grass from the Detroit and Sloan intersection. And I'll talk a little bit about that project here in a couple of slides. So thank you to Cuyahoga County. Did recently announce that they awarded some funds to this project. They awarded $50,000 using the program's actually called the Community Development Supplemental Grant. What it is the casinos pay tax dollars into the county, and those tax dollars are spread into the community as well as then repurposed by the county. And the city was fortunate to receive $50,000 to help support the Kaufman Park improvements this year. So we're also making some improvements to Fire Station 2 that include the addition of an apparatus bay, dedicated equipment storage, and upgraded laundry facilities, really to help improve the care and storage of the contaminated gear and clothing that unfortunately firefighters simply just have to use, and they create and going out and doing their activities and fighting fires. And so construction is currently underway on this and scheduled to be complete later this year. And so on May 24th, construction is going to begin on pedestrian safety, utility, and streetscape improvements on Detroit Avenue between Sloan and Graver. So this project is going to make permanent the painted curb lines and ultimately reduce a lane on Detroit to help support pedestrian safety and the continuation of the Metro Parks all-purpose trail out of the Rocky River Reservation. Currently, it's on the west side of Valley Parkway. Continue that pathway up out of the park along the south side of Detroit over to Graver. Then we have some other plans that we've been working on, both internally as well as then as part of a regional effort with the Metro Parks, with the City of Rocky River, with the County Planning Commission, to help look at larger connections throughout the community and region for bike and pedestrian facilities as part of future improvements. So these are some renderings that are looking at the northeast corner of Detroit and Sloan, as well as at the bend in front of Harry Buffalo. Really what the idea is trying to show here, just creating some landscape opportunities along with introducing some high quality materials and public art interventions. And that's what some of these slides are showing. So this was just a placeholder for where public art is to be installed. We have a separate call for artists that we put out that's really going to help shape and define that. We're actually in the process now of making that final selection. So look for that to be coming to life, but just really give you a sense of the opportunities and what we're trying to create with the streetscape. So although this is a city project, I mentioned the trail coming up out of the Rocky River Reservation. We are grateful for the support of the Metro Parks in this effort and their commitment to maintaining that trail along the south side of Detroit over towards Graber. So there's some major improvements that are currently being planned for Hilliard Road. The city is designing a resurfacing project that will begin at the bridge over the Rocky River and extend all the way to Warren Road Franklin Road intersection. So in addition to just a simple resurfacing, we're also adding bike lanes to the roadway. That'll be very similar to what we did on Lake Avenue. Design will be complete later this year, with construction to go out to bid and be completed in 2022. So alongside that effort, the county is also, Cuyahoga County is also planning to replace the Hilliard Road Bridge that's over the Rocky River. They are currently working on their design plans right now. And those plans won't be complete until the end of 2022. And so as we're wrapping up our road project, the county will then move into construction on the bridge replacement in 2023. So I just mentioned it is a replacement. So that means that bridge will be closed and completely removed and a new bridge built in its place. That will result in a closure for at least a couple of years, potentially 3 years. But as we get deeper into that project and the county starts to finalize some of that design, we'll have, of course, a lot of public notice and conversations about detour routes around this area. But just know that project is on the horizon in the next couple of years. And so as the mayor had shared, the city is making significant improvements to its sewer infrastructure. The wastewater treatment plant has the high rate treatment facility nearly complete. So this facility, what it does is it'll process high volume flows to the sewer plant that occur during certain rain events, particularly those that are high intensity, those quick downpours that we get that just inundate our sewer system and the sewer plant. And really what that ultimately does is if we can process that sewage faster, it helps eliminate that need for us to overflow sewers into the Rocky River. Commissioning and testing of this improvement's ongoing through this year and should be in full operation by 2022. Along with that high rate treatment facility, or HRT facility as it's called, we do also have what's called a digester project that's nearly complete and currently being commissioned and tested. So what a digester does is it helps break down organic waste that's captured and processed at the plant, ultimately with the overall goal of still helping us to process more waste faster and eliminate overflows in the city or into the Rocky River. And that digester improvement will be fully operational yet later this summer. So if there's a way to transition from sewers to art, I'm going to try to do that. And really before we start to focus in on some additional city projects and start to dive in on the Ward 4 projects, I do want to share that the city maintains a spectacular vernacular public art program that really creates private partnerships in support of public art on private property. And so these are a few examples on your screen. There has been some other images that were scattered throughout the presentation this evening. If you want to learn more about this program and where these art exhibits exist in the community, if you go to onelakewood.com/public art, and then when our website changes, it'll be lakewoodoh.gov/public art, or just type public art into the search bar. It'll take you to one of the links that will be provided is a link to our public art page. And on there, you'll find an interactive map where you can see the dozen or so art installations, murals, and other installations that we have throughout the community, especially as we have beautiful nights like we have in the window behind me. Get out, walk around, go check these out. There's a lot of great selfie spots along the way. Plus, they're associated with a lot of great businesses. Stop in, grab a bite to eat, grab a beverage, and just take advantage of the great community that we're fortunate to be a part of. So within Lakewood Park, built in the 1950s, last updated in the 1980s, Foster Pool will be getting a renovation in the near future. And so the city has recently selected proposals from design firms to help lead us through this public input and design process. In fact, we are in the process now of working with this company called Sixmo, SIXMO, to help lead us through that effort. And so this project will really kick off over the summer. You'll start to see some public participation items coming out here potentially later this week. Well, actually, definitely later this week. And then as we get Sixmo on board, you'll start to see more opportunities for engagement into this project, so that we can help really start to understand what the community desires and needs, and would like to see as part of this improvement to our great resource, but an aging resource in the community. So we're going to stay in Lakewood Park. We have a project that's currently under construction as well, replacing the former skate house with a modern men's and women's restroom facility. This was an early rendering of the building that kind of shows just the design and the concepts for how to include some public art into the project. Again, it's under construction right now. If you drive by, you'll see this. Walls are up and projects well underway at this point. So let's focus in now a few projects for the last couple of slides of what's happened in Ward 4. So in 2019, the city acquired the former Cove Church for the purposes of consolidating the Human Services Department, and really with the goal of bringing their support of children through seniors into a single intergenerational location. So plans are now complete. Plans have been bid. We're actually in the process now of executing the construction contracts for this design build project that's going to begin later this summer. So in addition to, and these are some renderings of the concepts for the outside of the building. So that the outside really is really not changing as a result of this project, but we are taking and reprogramming some of the open space along Lake Avenue to create a little bit of an outdoor facility, outdoor park, if you will. The top right is as you walk into the building and kind of see some of the space layout for entry desk. The sanctuary space repurposed into a community center, and then the family room, which is a signature piece of the Human Services Department, the family room down in the lower level of the repurposed building. So one thing that was also talked about a lot when the city acquired this property was how it can help with stormwater. So again, building off the mayor's conversation about the IWIP, the Integrated Wet Weather Improvement Plan, this site is also designated to provide stormwater storage to help to assist the city in dealing with those combined sewer overflows. This time, instead of into Rocky River, this would be directly into Lake Erie. So that project's a little bit farther out on the horizon. Still very much a key component of this project, of the overall Cove project. But pay attention, that'll happen here in the next several years as that IWIP plan starts to really come to life. Clifton Prado Park on Clifton Prado will also be getting an update to its equipment, an overall beautification to the park and property, and install some public art. I think this actually is the smallest park in the city. That one photo that you see on your screen actually encompasses the entire park. But as you can see, some outdated equipment that needs updated. Put in some new equipment, put in some bench swings, creating some opportunities for picnic tables in a small space, but trying to create some high quality amenities in this small space. George Usher Field at Madison Park is also going to be upgraded with new lighting that's going to allow for better visibility and also provide energy efficiency with LED lights. And the city's also been very fortunate to receive $35,000 from NOPEC and another $15,000 from the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency to support the expansion of electric vehicle charging stations in the city. And so 4 new locations are going to be added yet this year that have dual port level 2 stations. They're going to be at 2 of those locations are actually in Ward 4, Madison Park City Hall. Also a location out at Madison Park at the skate house that I just mentioned on a couple slides ago. And then also at the Detroit extension near Rio Street. And so as you come around that bend around Harry Buffalo, if you continue straight on Detroit, there's a bank of some angled parking spaces. We're going to take 2 of those spaces and install a charging station there. And so all of that's going to help support the 3 existing stations that we have in the city. One being downtown, the other being at Raising Cane's on Parkhaven Row. And then of course we have a high level stage 3 fast charger out at Winterhurst. And so as we close out, there are a number of other repair and rehab projects that are taking place in Ward 4. We have several street repairs projects on the horizon for this summer with McGee, Bramley, and Dowd. And then later this year along Detroit Avenue through all the wards, not just Ward 4, we're going to be working to optimize signal timing through the entire corridor by adding GPS timing to each signal, ensuring that it stays in sync with each other. And so right now, think about this: if you have an analog watch or even a battery operated watch clock in your home, over time that clock slows down, needs wound, needs a battery replaced. And so what happens when you do that across many signals across the entire corridor, even though they're all timed to work together, as that timing gets out of sync, now we start to get, the cars start to platoon in the red lights and we have delays. And so it becomes a very inefficient system. So what we do to correct that is we put GPS devices on all of our traffic devices, and it helps them stay in sync because now they're all using the same clock, and that's from the satellite positioning system that we have around the world, and helps create a much more efficient traffic system. And so last, certainly not least, we're also planning on some improvements to the refuse station on Berea Road. Design is this year, but ultimately with the goal of construction over 2022, that's going to create a new recycling facility. It'll have a stockpile storage yard for our public works employees and department. We're going to rehab the truck facility, and we're also going to relocate the animal shelter for the wastewater treatment plant site over to a new building on this property. So again, construction's still not until next year and probably be phased over a couple of years, but design's underway, and look for that project here in the very near future. And so with that, it's been a busy year. It's an even busier year, if that's possible, on the horizon. So I'll close out. I'll leave our contact information up here. And I'll turn that back over to the mayor for any closing comments. And I think actually Council President O'Malley may have joined us based on the text I saw. So Mayor, I'll hand it back to you, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Director Leininger. Lots of good updates, a lot of things going on in our community, a lot of positive things, always good to see. And yes, I see that Council President O'Malley did join us during the presentation. So I don't know, Councilman, if you want to say hi real quick before we wrap up.
Sure, thanks very much. And I really want to just say thank you to you, Mayor, and to Director Leininger and everyone else who's participated in the State of the City address tonight. Obviously, we have a lot of really important projects going on here in Ward 4 that I'm excited about. You can count on me as a partner to promote these and help see them to fruition. We actually have, I think, just a lot of really great opportunities in the next few years to bring the community together around this. Obviously, things like, public safety and, providing essential critical public services are the highest priority. But we should make sure that we're also being good stewards of our tax dollars by adding to our tax base as much as possible. So again, thank you very much, and really appreciated the presentation this evening.
Thanks, Council President. And thank you again to Councilwoman Keppel, Councilman Bullock. And thank you all of you for joining and taking time out of what is a beautiful evening here in Lakewood and listening to our presentation to hear a little bit about, where we've been and where we're going. So a lot of exciting things happening in our community. And I'm very much looking forward to the future and very much looking forward to in-person meetings and seeing you all soon. So with that, take care, have a great evening, and hopefully we'll see you in person here soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.